I'm gonna be honest and keep it real with y'all. My life's a mess. I'm a mess. I don't know where my gongs are for my singing bowls. I don't feel like moving right now, so we are just using the thing that was closest to me, which is the candle, so... Hey girl. So I was watching this YouTuber named Sorel, and she's inspired a lot in me recently. Especially just getting into self-portraits and expressing myself emotionally, and that's just being... yeah, that's just what I've been doing, especially, you may have seen it already if you're on my social media and follow me anywhere. But I was watching Sorella Moore, and she mentioned in one of her videos that she did 10 days of silence. And there's like an official word for it, that a practice that I feel Buddha taught at one point thousands of years ago, where the concept is where you're just in self-reflective mode and just silence. You're not talking to anybody, it's just meditation. And she talked to Sorel, talked about how it really changed the trajectory of her life. And so that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to, especially with everything going on right now, and like, not even going to speak in broad terms, with the situation with George Floyd has really just shaken something in me and really has started awakening something in me that has been long repressed or been part of my story since I was a kid. Not to really get into too much detail, but because I'm half black and half white, I was predominantly raised by the white side of my family, and the majority, there's still a few good eggs, but the majority of the white side of my family was very like hardcore repressed racism and homophobia, like hardcore. And because I was a kid and that was like all like, even though I was self-aware enough to, I was self-aware, but like because I was like my only, that was my introduction as a kid, like this was like my foundation as a kid on like how to cope with life. I learned like their method was always just like, oh, like dry sense of humor. If you're offended by something, then that means there's something wrong with you. You know, it was almost like an insult if you took offense to something. And so the constant homophobic remarks, the racism, whether it's directed at me or just at other people in my life, you know, it really shaped the way I viewed myself. Like, I had a painting from my grandfather, who I loved so much. I always said, like, just to give you an idea of like how skewed my vision was, and just where the self-hatred just really started. Like, I had a painting because I used to always say that I wanted to have blonde hair, blue eyes, and light skin, straight hair as well. And my grandfather did a painting for that, and like everyone found it so touching, and like I look back on it now, and just like it was fucked up, man. It was so fucked up that even my own family like fed into this, you know, fed into this self-hatred. And so that was my foundation for just how everything is, right? Because that was my foundation. That's how I went through life. I learned to repress the feelings that I had, because I took this as a sign of weakness. I took this as something wrong with me that I needed to develop more. And so I kind of took the power away, or claimed my power in like these racial slurs or these homophobic slurs. I would never use it aggressively towards anybody. It was always for self-deprecation jokes for myself, you know. It's never... And so like I kind of claimed its power back, because it's just like, let's be real, like I am a walking magnet for anyone that's ignorant. So, and since I've been very self-expressionate of myself and very like, I've been pretty ahead of my time in terms of like there was no one really that was wearing makeup when I started wearing makeup in terms of boys and all that. Like, I always just done like my thing and forced it on people. Not forced it on people, but you know, I had no shame, like spirituality, all of it, no shame. And so, you know, I had to develop not only a tough skin, but just learning how to disempower these words that I hear and still hear every day of my life. You know, I developed such a thick skin that it just came to the point where I started like suffocating and pretty much barricading and trapping and encapsulating this really sensitive and emotional being that was me. And it is me, right? I'm still like such a sensitive and emotional person. And so since I started my journey a couple of years ago, I always knew that there was like a level of a problem there, and it's something I've been progressively trying to work on, but I didn't know how, because Not that I felt like any of the slurs or anything were okay, because that's just how I functioned in life. And I also feel like this kind of like internet culture as well is where you can't be sensitive and, you know, you can't be weak and all that. Like and since the internet has been like part of my life since I was a kid, you know, there's nothing going on in my life that showed to me that I was living my life wrong, that this foundation needed to be completely changed. I thought this was just normal, or so I thought until yesterday. I When I started this 10 days of silence, my own version of it anyways, I went into it with the intention of just addressing blocks in my life, addressing blocks that were limiting my growth, because while I've really transformed my life and really have gone through, I've accomplished a lot and I'm really proud of what I've accomplished, I know I can just push myself so much more. I know that there are just some blocks there. And so when I did this 10 days of silence, I really wanted to explore my creative side, to explore these parts of me that I always would just numb down. Dopamine rush through social media, whether it's through work or through personal. I always had used the internet as an outlet and almost like a drug in some cases. I met someone a couple of weeks ago when I was at one of the parks in my town, and I was playing with my singing bowl, because that's just the weirdo I am, that like would just take a bunch of singing bowls to parks and just start playing them by myself. Like I could appreciate the weirdness factor of myself, and I really don't try to be weird, but it's just like I take a step back and I look at my life and my personality, and it's just like there's not any facet of myself that's normal, and I love that about myself. But anyways, I met somebody, I met somebody a couple weeks ago when I was at the park. I was playing with my singing bowl, and I didn't see this individual at all until I was getting up to leave. Let me do a dramatic play out of like what actually happened.
Girl, he's not walking towards us, is he? No. Yeah, we don't have to worry.
When I say we, I mean me and my 13 other personalities. They all have names, like Edna, Yasmin, Big Bertha, you know, they all have names. I'm sure if you stick around long enough to my channel, you'll meet them all eventually at some point. So that's what I mean when I say we. He had taken a picture of me and he wanted to send it to me through email because he was just doing this project that he had. And so after like a continuous awkward moments for me, and only on my end, because I ended up giving him the wrong email, so I had to like turn back around and like tell him the right email, which I'm sure he probably thought I just like gave him a fake email and then changed my mind. But regardless, so after we exchanged emails, he sent me the picture, and then we also like exchanged Instagrams, and that's how through the project he told me about what the project was for, and he actually has a podcast with two of his friends. So it was very LA to me. It was very like very LA, very millennial, very Sex in the City 2020, at least in my eyes. So I was like, consider me hooked, y'all. Like, I was just like, okay, this is interesting. So to make this short, I was listening to the podcast yesterday, and I thought there was a gay slur, that the individual that I met at the park said a gay slur for a joke. And I didn't know how to feel at the time. I kind of just like felt numb. It was kind of like time froze for a moment, because it was just like, not that it even matters. Like, we're not, you know, I don't know this person personally, but it was still like a moment where it's just like, I didn't know how to feel. And so I kind of just like went numb, and then my mind started racing, because I was just like, okay, is he actually homophobic, or is it just like him just using that word? But why am I feeling this way? Like, why am I feeling numb? Why is this bothering me? Because, you know, back I used to always just claim that word and just whatever. I don't do it now, but like at one point, you know, it was just like whatever. It was whatever to me. I would have been able to laugh on it. And so I emailed them. And you know, I know at this point you're gonna be like, well, Velka, I thought you were doing your 10 days of silence. To me, since like they're not my friends, you know, they're not they're not trying to be my friend. We're not having conversations. I felt there's just like something in me that I felt stirred to just email them and like let them know. It's just like, hey, like you know, and I normally don't do this, because it's just like, who the heck am I gonna tell like some strangers like something bothered me about their podcast, like woo. So when I sent in the process after I sent the email, I like instantly felt gross, because I didn't realize in the moment when I was doing it, but I was looking back on my email, and because there was like this fear in me that I didn't want to be seen as a victim, I didn't want it to be known that I was kind of offended. when I feel like I didn't deserve to be offended because I used to use the word for myself in my own jokes. So it's like, I feel like I should find it funny, that I should give them the benefit of the doubt. And so, like, even in the email, like, there's this fear because, like, I genuinely, like, thought that I was just going to get, like, such a, like, a bro email just being, like, told to screw off, which I even in the email, I'm pretty sure, told them in the green light, gave him, like, kind of like a green light to tell me to go screw off, just to, like, disempower that potential. Like, there's just so many, like, it's honestly sad, and I can laugh on it, honestly, but it's just, like, I was so gross and disappointed by my email because I really, instead of addressing my feelings, I try to be empathic about it and try to be extremely understanding about it. So it's just, I didn't get my point clear as much as I wanted to. And because I was doing this 10 days of silence, I couldn't suppress these feelings I was feeling with a dopamine rush from social media, because I still made it like a very conscious effort. Like, even though like I slipped and like would go on like Instagram feed, like I still made a very conscious point of just like taking everything off my phone and like not having like the tabs open for them. So I couldn't, and I knew like I needed to sit with these feelings. So that is what I was doing for the past 24 hours, was just like digging through like why I was feeling this way and like where it all, like the root of it all came from, and realizing like the foundation that it was built off of, and realizing that flaw, right? Realizing like where this trauma response, I guess, really, as dramatic as it sounds, was coming from. And so I really became grateful for the experience, like an insane amount. Like I ended up just crying, not because of like the things, it's just so stupid, like that part, but I was just like so moved by how this event happened, and like how like these random strangers really just changed my life, when that's like not their intention, they're just making a joke, right? It was just so, I became so grateful. And then I got an email. I appreciated the moment so much, and I was also just extremely embarrassed because I felt like I made it weird. That's where my overthinking brain is, right? I always feel like I usually am like the worst person to ever like message, just because I'm always just like overthinking everything and I don't like being a bother. So, but I was just extremely embarrassed about this, because I even went back and I like listened to it, and I realized that's exactly what he said. But it's weird how I like misheard it like 4 different times, because when I first heard it, I like played it back because I was just
like, girl, what?
like, did I just hear that right? You know, I was just so taken aback by it. And even like later on in the podcast, I think like one of them said bitch, like maybe like 5 minutes later, and then one of the other individual friends were just like language, and I'm like, oh, is that where we're drawing the line? Like, you know, it was just so crazy to me that how I was able to mishear maggot the entire time. It's understandable, but at the same time, it's just because I listened back to it like so many times during that moment, I don't understand how I misheard it. And it's so weird because I'm just so grateful for the experience, because if it wasn't for all these like by chance things, if it wasn't for the chance of him taking this individual taking a photo of me, and then us exchanging emails, and me having to like feeling driven enough to go back after I walked away from him 5 minutes later to give him my correct email, then going into this further to finding out he has a podcast and listening to it, and actually emailing him, which I would never do. It's so out of character for me, and that's just not me. Like, I'm more of the kind of person that will just like leave and just move on, keep it moving. Like, I'm not the kind of person that comments on things. I always keep my opinion to myself, because unless it's asked, like my opinion doesn't matter unless it's like being sought after, right? So it's like, who am I to like do that? And I don't know, it just feels like so divinely inspired, and I'm so appreciative of it, because it was because of this situation that I was able to like get a glimpse, or like feel it a little bit of like this thick skin like being removed, and finally being able to start experiencing like this extremely sensitive and emotional side to myself that always was part of me, but I always had repressed it so much because I viewed it as something bad in a weird way, and I didn't even realize that I viewed it in that way. And so, as embarrassing as this situation is, I'm just so extremely grateful, you know? And I know I'm probably like a weirdo for like over analyzing, like having this coming to this conclusion, and I'm probably gonna just send this video to them just to like in my apology email because I just feel inclined to. And on the chance that they are watching this, I do want to say that I'm sorry. You know, recently, especially in the last couple of months, I've started really like looking at myself personally and learning how to like more aspects of myself. And I've started to not only realize that the more that I like myself, the more I realize I deserve to express myself creatively. And it was because I started expressing myself creatively with self-portraits. It seems so vain, but it's like it was through this that I started allowing myself to be creative. And it was through this creative outlet that allowed me to start getting more in touch with my emotions. And it was because of this event, this such a unique, seemingly pointless to everybody but me event. I was able to experience something about myself that I haven't felt since I was a kid. And I know it sounds so ridiculous that I wish I could just bring into words the feeling that I have of being able to experience these emotions. It's like the more I'm able to lift this heavy depression weight that I've carried since I was 8 years old, 7, 8 years old, the more I'm finally able to start experiencing and developing these feelings and who I am as a person truly, and not who I feel like I needed to like create myself to be, who I needed. Like, I spent so much time trying to protect this emotional, sensitive person that I lost sight of it. And this has been I spent so much of my life just trying to self-preserve, trying to protect me so I wouldn't go over the edge, so I wouldn't just sink into a bunch of darkness and just spiral down a bad path that I haven't been able to be human. And it feels so great now. It feels so wonderful to experience emotions and to be able to have it feel like me. And so yeah, thank you.